Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth of Motor City Madmouth, and we have a special guest on the broadcast tonight. Her name is Jennifer Cobb, and Jennifer, thanks for being on the program.
Hi, Scott. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. You know, Jennifer, when I get an opportunity to have someone like you on, especially one that's actually doing a lot of things with a worthwhile cause, I jump at that possibility. So I'm glad that we can have you on tonight. So Jennifer, let's talk about your nonprofit Team Gateway to a Cure.org. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Team Gateway to a Cure was started about 3 years ago. Before that, my father, Cobb, same name as the baseball player, interesting, was diagnosed with Parkinson's right around 1999, same time when Michael J. Fox went live public with his announcement of the disease. And I was actually with the St. Louis Rams at the time, and started with them inaugural season to Super Bowl. And after retiring, hanging up my pom-poms, I thought, I wanted to use my platform to really raise awareness for Parkinson's, raise money for research, as well as focus on the caregiver support, the other flip side to the disease, which I collaborated efforts with the Michael J. Fox Foundation as well as the Muhammad Ali Parkinson Center. And so Team Gateway to a Cure was born. I'm 501c3, and I have a board of directors and really great team behind me. The NFL has been nothing but very supportive with my efforts. And many times you hear of a lot of the players that start foundations and use their platform to really make a difference. You very rarely hear of a cheerleader, or very few, and I'm one of them, and wanted to use that platform of as an ambassador of the NFL to cheer on the caregivers that are the ones behind the scenes that are caring for the ones that are going through not just Parkinson's, but all brain diseases, ALS, MS, concussions, aneurysms, Alzheimer's. There's just a lot out there, and the caregivers are the ones that don't really get recognized. And so through my foundation, Team Gateway to a Cure, I'm hoping to give hope and comfort back to those that are going through it.
Yeah, it's funny how you talk about all those different ones. Everybody has to be awareness of CTE, because that's the one thing that I know that can't be diagnosed until after the person is deceased. So what are your thoughts about the CTE and the more cases that it's having, and a lot of prominent players have killed themselves and went through some very bad endings?
Yeah, I mean, it's really raised awareness that it is very silent, and the NFL, I think, has made many changes in strategically designing certain helmets, and also kind of discouraging children, boys, to hold off on playing the sport. But interesting that you have brought that up, because I'm now working with a company that does pre-screening before and after for brainwaves, and they're one and only in the whole country that actually has this capacity to look at the brain before season, and many times these guys are misdiagnosed. The team doctor will look at symptoms based on, headaches, what happened, blurry vision, lethargic, feeling lethargic. But many times, until you actually get a clear look at what's going on inside the brain, you can't player with a concussion. And so what happens many times is these guys are diagnosed with a concussion and they're sat out for a game or two or maybe half the season, and they're one of the star players. Well, they've already got labeled, and these scouts that are wanting to scout them, not from just high school but college into the NFL pros, have already labeled them as, oh, he's concussed, he's out for a season, and many times that's not even the case. It just got, pushed around, and their head might have been rattled a little bit, but that's not necessarily a concussed, player. And so the good thing is that this technology is out there now, so it takes the guesswork out of misdiagnosis in these guys, because they spent from pee-wee on working their butts off to get to where they're at today, and to have some doctor just based on physical symptoms and diagnose them as concussions and make them sit for half a season out and label them in hopes that that they do get to play in the big leagues one day. It's really very unfortunate. And being that this is draft day, I can, my heart, as a mom of two boys that do play ball, just aches for these guys going through the draft virtually. I mean, they've worked their butts off from pee-wee on, and this is the day that they've waited, and to have to go through this joy and this moment the way that they have to is just, it's very, very sad, very unfortunate.
What's amazing is the fact that I am really happy that, it's one thing that you were cheerleading for a team, but now you're a cheerleader in a much higher sense, because now you're cheerleading for a cause. So you tell me that the NFL definitely is cheering for you to come up with some answers to try to help them out. Tell me where the NFL's endorsement / support comes into play with what your latest cheerleading endeavor is.
Yeah, so when I go, like for instance, I was just recently with a number of players, Antonio Brown and just a bunch of guys at the Super Bowl for the week in Miami, and we've collaborated efforts together. They're trying their push and raise awareness for their foundations and their charities as well as I am. And I think at the end of the day, the common denominator with every single one, all of them, is there's a caregiver behind the scenes of somebody battling. With Antonio, it's sickle cell, and with Jennifer, it's Parkinson's and brain diseases. I mean, there's always a caregiver behind the scene, and that's actually what is going to lead me into talking about the champ. I had the honor to meet Lonnie Ali, the widow of Muhammad, and she was very strategic with giving me a personal tour of Muhammad Ali's Parkinson's Center out in Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona, and his legacy he wanted to leave before he passed on was focus on caregiver support. Michael J. Fox raises millions of dollars for research, and I commend his efforts and back him. In fact, I've raised a lot of money for the Fox Foundation, and as I am today, a VIP Fox representative, and he honors me in New York City for my efforts at the VIP Awards. And I will continue to raise money for research and through different fundraising events that I've had in the future as well in the past. But, the other side to this, Scott, is Mohammed's legacy, and that's the caregiver, the one that is fighting behind the four walls, being the cheerleader, making sure they don't fall and slip, making sure that they get their medication, driving them to and from the doctor appointments, giving them hope, giving them comfort, making sure their meals are in their bellies and they're tucked in bed with a kiss on the forehead every night. I mean, where's their 5Ks? Where's their fancy dinners, auctions, raising money for them? There isn't. At least I haven't heard of any, but where's their pat on the back? I mean, the insurance companies now are recognizing them as a second patient. And so how many medical facilities and hospitals are now putting in these support groups for these caregivers to go and to trauma bond and talk with others that are going through the exact same situation. I mean, they get frustrated. They have anxiety and depression, especially if you're a low-income senior trying to pay your bills, working out of the home and loving and caring for someone going through Parkinson's or Alzheimer's or MS or ALS or a concussion or an aneurysm or a stroke. So it's really, really challenging. And so when you're at the end of the day and you're home alone by yourself with your loved one, where's your hope and where's your comfort?
Right.
And so through Team Gateway to a Cure, our hope and our mission is to really raise awareness for caregiver support. You know, we don't have a cure for Parkinson's. We do have many, many things that we can talk about that are up and coming, that are brand new things that have developed through research and through the money that we've raised, but we don't have a cure. Right. And until we do, the other side of the race for a cure is the caregiver.
Okay, let's talk about a couple things. First, I want to go to Antonio Brown. You know, here's a flamboyant individual who's probably exhausted a few opportunities to play in the league. I would find it hard to believe a team will give him another opportunity because, you know, I got to wonder what's going up in his head. You know, does he have any sickle cell? How can you attribute to his erratic behavior? Antonio Brown, to me, has all the skills and potential out there, and he's a lightning rod. He's already gone through, 3 teams within the last year or so. He goes from the Steelers, he goes to the Raiders, and then the Patriots let him go, and then all these series of incidents leading up. You know, we all know he has a talent, but is he more trouble than he's worth? And how does Antonio Brown get straightened out?
He needs to answer that himself.
Right.
I think he needs to come down to having a heart-to-heart meeting with his head.
Right.
And figure out what he wants and where are the priorities in his life. You know, that goes to say many other players too. San Antonio, I was also working with him during the Super Bowl week, and he's the one that, you know, caught that magic catch.
Right.
And he was just a deer and just a sweetheart. And he's struggling just to push the efforts of what his foundation is. He's got sickle cell through his family and trying to raise funds and awareness. And he's a caregiver caring for his children.
Right.
I'm a caregiver caring for my father. I'm an adult child with 3 children of my own, single parent. And, you know, trying to make a difference. Where do I go for my support?
Right.
What that support looks like. Many times you'll have a lot of emotional history that's attached, resentment that's attached to caregivers. You know, for instance, why should I take care of my dad, man? He never showed up to any of my ball games and practices, and now he's sick and he expects me to drop my life. I'm a father caring for my kids and trying to make a living, and I got to stop my life and care for him now that he's got this disease. Or what about my mom never showed up for any of my ballet recitals, and now she wants me to quit what I'm doing and stop. I mean, she never did this or that or any of this other stuff for me, and now she wants me to change my life. I mean, so there's a lot of emotional history.
Right.
Sometimes that's attached. And so as you look forward as a caregiver, how do you meet them where they're at?
Right.
And just love them for what they're going through, and how does giving hope and comfort look like?
So do you think in the case of Antonio Brown that he has to come to grips within himself, or do you think that he's sustained a lot of hits? You know, when you're playing not only in high school but college, and then into the pros, the head does take a beating at every level, not just the NFL level. So do you think that some of Antonio Brown's problems are attributed to trauma to the head? I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah, I can't speak for that because
Okay.
I don't know the situation. It's like saying I'm depressed because it's raining. I
Right.
mean, everybody, you can be sad because it's raining, you can be sad because it's sunny. I don't know.
Okay.
All I know is that for me, there was a village behind the scenes that took that for me to get to where I'm at today with my foundation, the success. I think at the end of the day, each one of us have a choice.
Right.
Do you really, really, really not know what to do? Come on. You know what you need to do. I mean, he's a grown man.
Right.
He's very smart. He's intelligent. He's extremely gifted. Many of them are.
Right.
They know what they need to do.
Okay.
So, I can't speak for what if there's concussion in play or,
Right.
If he's got resentment from the past of mom and dad, or
Right.
maybe he didn't get along with his sissy and now there's some, fall. I don't know. All I know is that what you need to do is pull up your pants. You need to make some really good choices
Mm-hmm.
and, start using the network. In fact, that's one of the things that I did. I didn't make money being an NFL cheerleader. These guys are on the field making millions of dollars, and I'm on the sidelines putting in 35 hours in practice a week on top of working a full-time job.
Right.
You don't do it for the swimsuit calendar, trading cards, and public appearances.
Right.
You do it for the network and the ambassadorship and the
Right.
doors that open. So, with that being said, that's the secret to the success for Team Gateway.
Right.
These doors have opened because I've nurtured the friendships and the networking that along the way over the last number of years. And I've created a really great friendship with many, many NFL players, NFL cheerleaders, directors of entertainment, coaches, staff, and I take a lot of pride in the brand that I've built over the years, and the friendships and the trust and loyalty
Mm-hmm.
with each and every one of them. My foundation, Scott, today would not be where it is if it wasn't for that.
All right. So you talk.
There's not some
I'm
money
sorry.
in the bank, but there's a lot of banking behind the scenes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's so. How inspired then, Jennifer, are you with the noble way that Steve Gleason is handling his ALS? You want to talk about a guy who would inspire the living daylights of anybody. I think Steve Gleason, the way he's been able to battle the way he is with another injury, I find that more and more people, especially in football, get nailed with ALS, and for obvious reasons. But Steve Gleason, to me, is just unbelievably inspiring.
Yes, and I think the heroic effort that you just said is to recognize that's what gives hope and comfort. In fact, one of the things that I'm in the early stages of collaborating with my board and the foundation is we're coming up with a book along with a documentary movie. You can watch the trailer. I didn't know if you had a chance to watch it on the website, but the book is Parkinson's and Daughters, the stories of caregivers and that are going through not only loving their loved one with Parkinson's, but other brain diseases. And those stories are so incredibly heroic because that's what gives hope and comfort to the next person. In fact, the minute my dad gets done at the YMCA from a workout, where's the first place he goes? He grabs his cup of coffee. He heads over to that round table with all the dudes, all the fellas. They sit around, they maybe grab a donut or two. And you know what they talk about? They talk about dude stuff. They trauma bond. They share stories.
Yeah.
And sometimes those stories that they share, how they get through their day, they listen to each other more than they do the doctor in the office. And, there's something so healing and comforting and so real about those stories that we share. In fact, what's the first thing you do in the morning, Scott, when you post something on social media? What's the first thing you do when you go to your social media page? You look at the comments.
Exactly.
Those comments are what? They're stories.
Right.
Those stories are helping you get through whatever that post was.
Right.
And those, make no mistake about it, every single one of your friends that follow you are reading the same comments too, because
Right.
it's human nature. We share our stories. That's what gets us through the day.
Right.
In fact, one of the things we should be recognizing even now in this quarantine is quarantine. The Latin root word for that is change.
Right.
40, and it's 40, and 40 means change.
Right.
And, change is so, to recalibrate and to restructure is so incredibly rewarding.
Right.
Maybe that's what AB's doing right now.
Right.
Maybe that's what a lot of these players that have diagnoses, they recalibrate and they look at their life completely different. And I think a lot of us now, through this quarantine, whether you like Trump, agree with Trump, whatever, it has allowed us to slow down, to look at our life in kind of a little bit of a different perspective. And that is one of the things that I talk a lot of when I go to these caregiver conferences is Jennifer, how can I be a good caregiver? Well, most of the time, you're a caregiver to someone that's a little older, correct?
Correct.
Older people move slower, they think slower, they do slower. And so, given that, it gives you the opportunity to sit down, slow down, and just enjoy who they are and where they're at. And sometimes that is the most simplest thing you can do, and the most meaningful as a caregiver.
So let's get to know Jennifer Cobb a little bit. You live in the St. Louis area, is that correct?
Yep, live in the St. Louis area, born and raised in Chicago.
Uh-huh.
My father was blue collar, started an electrical company, learned the trade through his father, and after a number of years, a number of trucks, guys working for him, Cobb Electric, worked on some of the most famous buildings, as we all know today in Chicago, John Hancock building, and did a lot of work for Oprah Winfrey and her studio, and the gentleman who invented Precious Moments did a lot of work for him in his home, and just got to stand on the sidelines of my father's life and watch his legacy unravel and see and learn a lot about that trade and how incredibly rewarding it is for a daughter to watch my dad go from nothing to create something that's worth so much more than just a dollar bill. And I'm so proud today to say that when my dad decided to retire, he actually offered the company to both my brothers, Ty Cobb Jr. and my brother Joe Cobb.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe, living out in Montana, he's a chef, owns a couple of restaurants, and does a lot of commercial real estate. Really wasn't interested in running the company. And my brother Ty Jr. is more of a follower,
right,
instead of a leader. That's just his personality. It's fine. So my dad's like, what do I do with my company that I worked and developed and created and done very well over many, many years? Well, there was a gentleman by the name of Tommy who started with my dad from a young buck of about 16 years old and worked for my dad, showed up every day, never called off, did what he was supposed to do, and worked side by side by my father,
Right.
and he's a father himself now of 8 children. And after many conversations with Tommy, my father decided, well, I've got Parkinson's, I've made my million, I'm happy with where I'm at in life. So he gifted the company to Tommy. He gave it to him.
Wow.
Take him $1. He just said, shake my hand and tell me you'll do proud. Run this just the way I taught you. And he did. And you, even today, will see these trucks, Cobb electric trucks, driving around Chicago. You know, Scott, that is the legacy of a man that I love, my father, and it breaks my heart, even to this day, because he's my hero. I look at him as if I'm back standing there as I'm 16 years old watching this man that I looked up to in so many different ways. Now today is in a wheelchair and fragile,
Right.
and I can't give him a cure.
Right.
And I can't do anything outside of just loving him and just being there and just enjoying who Ty is.
Well, I got to tell you, Jennifer, when you talk about the John Hancock building, I used to stay at the Westin Hotel all the time when the Detroit Lions took on your Chicago Bears. And, but I love Michigan Avenue. So let's go into some other sports stuff, okay? We're going to lighten it up a little bit before we go into some other things, all right? All right. I have to ask you to tell me to talk about your experience as a St. Louis Rams cheerleader. You had an opportunity to work there with the Greatest Show on Turf. How enjoyable is that? Now I'm going to hit you with a bunch of bullet points of sports things, okay? And then we'll gravitate to where I'm going. I have a lot of fun. So we're gonna. I guarantee you by the end of this broadcast here, if we can't put a smile on your face, and Santa Claus is Jewish, and I expect to do that.
I graduated from Carbondale Southern Illinois University in dietetics, food and nutrition, landed in St. Louis working for a children's hospital. And I was actually driving down the road and I heard an advertisement that the Rams were coming here from LA and they were hosting open auditions for 40 spots for cheerleaders. And actually, I don't know if you know this, but and you will actually learn more about Mrs. Frontieri's life because her documentary movie's in post-production. It's going to be released. But Mrs. Frontieri was actually a showgirl in Vegas. Many people don't know that.
Right.
That's where she got a lot of her dancing. So she was very particular about her girls and the look and the brand of what was going to be on the field representing her. Going into the audition process, I was very insecure because I did not have a strong dance background. I cheered and had a lot of gymnastic from high school, and I also did college cheerleading. But as you can see, college cheerleading and professional NFL cheerleading are two different things. College cheerleading is a lot of stunting, a lot of ponytails, mark your face with the mascot, all the colors and the mascot and stuff, and you get tossed in the air and you do lots of gymnastic stunts. NFL professional dancing is very choreographed, professional dancing, very skilled, detailed. You're entertaining on the field for a purpose, and that's to get the crowd excited, bring them more into the game of football. And off the field, your brand is to be an ambassador, a spokesperson for what Mrs. Frontieri stands for. And they coach you and they groom you from the minute you walk on the field and sign a contract, the exact same thing that the players do. They look at the whole picture of the player. They look at the whole picture of the cheerleader. And from the minute you get chosen, just like during summer camp, these guys are hustling for a spot, not necessarily you're on the team until the very end. And they're looking at all factors, just like the cheerleaders. They're looking at every factor from The minute you walk out on for summer camp, putting in, 8 to 10 hours of dancing, over 5 straight days of exhaustion, and then see how you interact with the other girls, see what character traits you really truly are, see how you interact with the public,
Right.
big high CEO companies, interview process with a board of 15 to 20 different people, putting the pressure on you, asking you all kinds of questions. So you have to know how to withhold yourself to a certain standard, not just be pretty with lipstick and big hair. So and the same goes true for the guys on the field. I mean, yeah, you might have talent, but if you're a jerk on the other end, they're not going to want you representing their brand.
True.
And so it's important that they look at all factors. So a couple thousand girls showed up for 40 spots, and I was so incredibly honored to have been selected as one of the 40. I was on the team from inaugural season to Super Bowl. I was honored to be a part of the greatest show on turf, and still today am great friends with Warner and Bruce and Marshall, and just a lot of the great, Torrey Holt, just a lot of the great guys that, I still today keep in contact with. And so honored that Isaac is going to be wearing his yellow jacket this year, so
Yeah.
we're real excited. So, which leads me to probably the next question that you and your listeners are probably interested in, is how, having a city of St. Louis, how could you be excited about football when you get your team taken away?
Boy, you ever heard of GMTA?
Yeah.
What is it?
So,
What is GMTA, Jennifer?
What?
What does GMTA stand for?
GMTA?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I need you to figure out. Yeah, what does it stand for?
Mind thinking exactly what was going to come out of your...
Well, okay, you're dancing around it. Then again, you're a dancer anyways. Great minds think alike. That's okay. So.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, the thing is, forever, we will forever be a championship Super Bowl team.
Right.
And St. Louis actually, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if my memory serves me correct, and from what trivia I've been told, is that we are the only city that is a champion of all sports. We hold the Stanley, we hold the Super Bowl, we hold the baseball, the World Series,
Right.
and then we also hold the basketball.
Well, back in the day, I know that you guys had the St. Louis Hawks. I know that, and I know about the
Yes.
Checker Dome. So, all right. So
Anyway, so the reason, yeah, I love football. I do. I truly love the sport, and celebrating that we will always forever be a Super Bowl championship
right.
city. No one will ever be able to take that away.
Right.
So it's really kind of cool when the guys come back. Bruce comes back every year for his football challenge. Warner, Torrey Holt, Marshall, a lot of the guys will come back and hang out. Ricky Prohl, and we collaborate together. We have an auction dinner. We, have some good times that we hang out. Reminisce about locker room days and field days, and that's fun. I mean, that's what keeps you going. These players, as well as the cheerleaders, yes, we miss the game, but we miss locker room time more.
I'll bet.
Every player will tell you that, and every cheerleader too. They love playing the game. I'm not taking any of that away.
Right.
But what they really love are the moments in the locker room when they just goof off and just play pranks on each other and just be silly, and
Right.
there's a lot of bonding that goes on in locker room time, and there's a lot of ups, a lot of downs, and a lot of growth. And you can imagine the times when those guys were on the field in the prime of their life. What age were they?
Right.
There was a lot of growing emotionally, physically, mentally, and so they share those together. And there's a bond that will never be broken. The cheerleaders are the exact same. And so when we do get back together, whether it's from our, alumni event, or, Isaac coming back into town and bringing a football challenge, and the cheerleaders all helping them volunteer. That's what we do. We talk about those days.
So, Jennifer, let me ask you this. I know you were dancing around it or talking about it. So how disappointed were you when they left for L.A.? I know that, there were some stadium dilemmas that they tried to get something done, and now St. Louis, unfortunately, has lost an NFL team twice. Who knows down the road if they'll ever get a third opportunity. But did that deflate you and the city when they left for L.A.?
Well, sure. Yeah, it was devastating. We are really good fans.
Right.
We are, and as you can see with baseball, we're very committed to our teams. So yeah, it was devastating. But then, I think it was 2-3 years later, we ended up winning the Stanley Cup.
Right.
And then that brought a lot of camaraderie back to the city. I don't know what's going to happen in the future now that this COVID-19 thing hit, which forces the XFL into bankruptcy.
Right.
That just aches my heart.
Right.
Because they had their first game, which was sold out.
Right.
And one of the players actually re-signed with the NFL.
Right.
So, it's just, what does that tell you? It tells you that people they love football. They love, it's all-American, good old-fashioned father-son, daughter-father, family, whatever event, and people ache for it.
Right.
And with this COVID-19, the XFL, and then, of course, Kroenke takes the team to LA, and,
right.
It's heartbreaking. So when I do hear of Isaac Bruce coming back into town with the Flag Football Challenge, and Kurt has his winter jacket charity event every year, and him and his wife Brenda come back, and it brings up those memories, and they're happy.
Right.
And those are happy memories that I love to talk about even today.
Well, let me tell you this: when the when pro football returned for the XFL with the St. Louis Battlehawks, I knew right off the top of my head, Jennifer, that was definitely going to draw a lot of people, and they could have sold the upper deck of the dome as well. So, for those individuals doubting pro football, the St. Louis Battlehawks made sure don't doubt it. And it's unfortunately that Vince McMahon folded up shop for yet the second time. But I think, Midwestern fans are great in general. Listen, Jennifer, I'm from the Detroit area, and I know that anywhere, whether it's Milwaukee, Detroit, Chicago, St. Louis, Kansas City, whatever, Cleveland, Midwestern fans are some of the best in the country. So I can tell you right now that I was watching those St. Louis Battlehawk games, and I'll tell you what, those are the ones I was most interested in, and I was so impressed with St. Louis and the XFL for the little time that you have, no doubt about that. So, and
what does that tell you?
Well,
it tells you that people love sport. They love football.
Oh yeah. Well, not less, and can't forget the fact that Missouri Tigers football is pretty popular there. So let's talk about your premier franchise in the area. You have two. I'm saving these deliberately, and then we'll go into a couple more things while we have an opportunity to do that. Nobody has to tell me about the St. Louis Cardinals having an incredible history. The amount of Hall of Famers, World Championships, and the storied history goes beyond anybody's wild imagination. So at least the one thing I can also, and once upon a time, the St. Louis Cardinals football team, I met Dan Deerdorf in January, and I'll have to get you a picture of Dan and I, because I know he's really storied out there. But, talk about briefly the St. Louis Cardinals, the Blues, and I want to get back into some other points, all right? Lead off with the Cardinals, since that's appropriate baseball term anyways.
Yeah, I don't really have much interaction with Dan. I don't really run in that arena.
Right.
So I do know that he's got his restaurant is very successful, and he's very well honored and liked, in St. Louis. I don't really know much about what he does on a personal level,
Right.
but I was very honored that the Cardinals actually hosted a game, Strike Out Parkinson's, for my foundation, and a percentage of ticket sales went back to Team Gateway to a Cure, and we donated percentage of the money to the Michael J. Fox Foundation, as well as the Muhammad Ali Parkinson Center, and some of it stayed here locally in St. Louis
So,
for a caregiver support program. So I was very honored. With that being said, the book that we are in the early stages of putting together will have a public figure in each chapter. And Jack Buck actually passed away of Parkinson's.
well, did he
So
really?
Joe Buck was obviously his son, and he's been very kind to be involved in one of the chapters through the life of the eyes of himself as a son loving a dad, as a caregiver, and what he knew about Parkinson's prior and how it changed his life, and all kinds of things that we all want to know as questions. Jack Buck was just a hero in so many people's eyes here in St. Louis, someone that we followed throughout the years, and the heartbreak of Parkinson's that took his life really resonates with many people who are suffering from the disease. And I am so proud today that we do now have a pill that you can take that actually reverses the damage that Parkinson's has done to the brain.
Wow.
So I'm very, very excited to have announced that. And that comes from a lot of perseverance through research and funding. And Dr. Perlmutter, who's a neurologist, science research scientist here in St. Louis at Washington University, just received $1 million grant to continue researching on this Parkinson's disease, is also collaborating his efforts to back us with our documentary movie that I don't know if you had a chance to watch the trailer on the website, but the movie is called A Race for Another Day.
Mm-hmm.
And a race for another day until we have a cure for Parkinson's. A race, another day of life comes from the other flip side, and that's the caregiver. So the movie is about Dr. Jerry Medoff, who was an infectious disease doctor who became world famous 20 years ago when he invented the 21 pill cocktail for AIDS, HIV.
Okay.
And back then it was a worldwide epidemic. It
Right.
was taking out thousands and thousands of lives, and at that time he was a homophobe.
Right.
But as he cared for these patients, it changed his bedside manner. And now, if you develop the disease of HIV, you take one pill and live a normal life.
Wow.
So Dr. Jerry Medoff today is taking 21 pills for Parkinson's. So as we live in this time where we're living the biggest medical breakthrough of AIDS, to be a part of that unraveling in our lifetime, where will Parkinson's be 20 years from now?
Right.
As we unravel the science behind that.
Right.
And to be not only co-producing the movie, but also in the movie as a caregiver.
Right.
And what that looks like. Because until we have a pill that will allow these people that are suffering the disease to live a normal life like HIV, I got to be the best dang caregiver I can. That's just
Right.
to love my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Whether there's emotional history or not. I meet him where he's at. I love him and just enjoy that process.
All right, so let's talk about the St. Louis Cardinals. I got a couple Buck stories, and we'll get on a few other things. All right. Let's talk about the baseball team. Obviously, one of your longest-standing franchises in the St. Louis area. To me, St. Louis Cardinals baseball is the thing that puts St. Louis on the map. So tell me how much your fondness for the St. Louis Cardinals in general. Obviously, has some great players like Stan Musial, Bob Gibson, and I actually have a photo of the Tigers beating the Cardinals in the '68 World Series, and I was at Game 3. Obviously, before you were born. But talk about your affection for the St. Louis Cardinals baseball. Then I'll get to the Blues, Buck stories, and then we'll have a few more things to go. All right, so let's lead off with the Cardinals.
Yeah, like I said earlier, the Cardinals are just an amazing organization. They've restructured a lot. We've got so many great connections of memories.
Right.
From Ozzie Smith to Mac to Edmonds to just the world championship titles through the years.
Right.
You don't make that kind of dent without commitment, perseverance, and an amazing village behind you. And the Cardinals organization, they know the formula, and they work that formula, and that gives them the championship team.
Well, sure they do, because they don't have many bad years. I've seen what they've done. Well, some teams are rebuilding. This one doesn't. I think they reload, but they do things the right way. It doesn't hurt that the Augie Bush, and everybody that they've had through the years have done a remarkable job there. So I have to I've got to give you a couple of Buck stories to go on the Blues, and now I want to go over a few more things, if I may. All right?
Yeah.
First of all, I met Jack Buck many years ago in Pompano Beach, the Pompano Beach Municipal Stadium. The Cardinals were taking on the Texas Rangers, and we were sitting in this press box so dingy that you had to walk up steps to get to it. That's how bad it was. So Jack goes in and takes a window out. He gets nailed with a foul ball, and the other announcer was, by the way, you ever heard of Dan Kelly? Duh. Okay, the greatest hockey announcer I've ever seen. And Jack comes out to see a lot of us because I was working not only as a scoreboard operator but a writer at the time. And he had the best sense of humor on the planet. Okay, when he showed the black and blue mark when he took the window out of there, that was one story. And I got to talk to him. He was really, really nice. Then this past February, I met Joe Buck and told him I met his dad. And Joe and I took a picture together. It was really neat. And then I told him about the story, and Joe got a kick out of it. And so we took a photo. It was pretty neat. So just throw those at you. Figured you'd be interested. So with that said, let's go to the St. Louis Blues. They won their only Stanley Cup at the expense of the Boston Bruins. That certainly had to be a incredible experience for you folks out there.
Yes, it was 49 years in the making.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. It was incredible. It was just magical to be a part of the celebration. And after Kroenke ripped the football team from us, we needed a celebration like this, and we were not expected to take it. The Blues had, again, a great formula. They worked it. They stayed together, worked hard, and obviously walked away with the championship. And just incredibly humble through the whole process. Not braggadocious at all.
Right.
And I'm just really proud to be living in a city and to be able to share that excitement for the organization as well as all the people here in the city of St. Louis.
Well, it didn't hurt that you had an interim coach looking for the full-time job. And if you know anything about the adage in hockey, Jennifer, you have a hot goaltender, and they could lead you right where you need to go. So,
yeah.
and I was pulling for him. I was looking for a newbie to win it, and the Blues, who had their hearts gutted by the Detroit Red Wings when they were in the other conference, but it was good to see the Blues achieve that.
Yeah,
so.
And speaking of hockey, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Gretzky's dad, Wayne, was diagnosed with Parkinson's a few years back.
Yeah.
And so we would love for him to be a part of the book and to have a chapter dedicated to Wayne and Walter, and what Wayne knew about Parkinson's prior to the diagnosis and how it changed his life, and what he has done since the diagnosis with his children and family members, and to raise awareness for the disease.
Okay, well, I want to go over a couple of Muhammad Ali points. I'll ask you a few questions, and then we'll wrap up the broadcast, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
First of all, just so you know, Muhammad Ali was my hero. I worked with him in the 1980s, and then when your publicist, Fago, came to me, that I certainly was anxious to talk to you at that point, because when you strike a chord with me, and you saw that photo on Facebook when I was only a 19-year-old with my jaw punched by him, then I knew that this was something that I was really excited to work with you on. But yeah, he was my hero, and I worked with him in the 1980s. Now, ironically, ESPN this weekend had many of Ali's greatest fights, the George Foreman and the trilogy involving Joe Frazier. He had 3 great fights. And I think that trilogy of fights with Joe Frazier took a major toll, leading to his Parkinson's disease. Obviously, Ali went as long as he could. But what do you think? Do you think that the fight he had with George Foreman was a masterfully fought, and he knew? You talk about a fighter who outclassed another one. Ali Foreman definitely was indeed that. But the trilogy of Joe Frazier, you had practically, I think 2 of them went 15 and 1 went 14, and those 2 guys fought just 3 amazing fights. Do you think that trilogy led to the Parkinson's disease that Muhammad Ali would subsequently end up getting?
Yeah, so first off, I think there's a misconception. Boxing doesn't cause Parkinson's.
Right.
Just like eating a hot dog doesn't cause you to get a cold.
Right. Okay.
But there's 2 different Parkinsonisms. There's just like kind of like diabetes. There's a type 1 and a type 2.
Right.
So Parkinson, if you are diagnosed in your early age, say 40s, which is when Michael went public, there's a genetic link factor that you can actually take a test through insurance. They will send it to you to see if you have the gene. And just because you have the gene to Parkinson's doesn't necessarily mean that you will show signs and symptoms of the disease. Then the other side, the other type of Parkinsonism is environmental. And through the research that shows that Parkinson's actually starts in the gut, and there's an environmental factor that will manifest itself to the brain and affects the physical symptoms as we see today, which is the short gait, the short steps when you walk, the tremors in the extremities of the body, the legs and the arms, the dyskinesia, which is the twitching of the head, the bobbling of the head, the short, small handprint, the projection of the voice is very soft.
Right.
So, with that being said, my father was actually on a fishing trip, and he remembers a farmer throwing out pesticide on his field, and a few short time later, he ended up getting some kind of a terrible stomach flu. And then a few years later, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. Is that what caused it? I don't know. I do know that he does have the gene.
Right.
And both of my brothers have restless leg syndrome. Will both of my brothers end up with Parkinson's? I don't know. But there is an environmental factor with Muhammad Ali.
Right.
Did he have the gene? That I do not know. When I did speak with Lonnie, his widow, and I was out there at the Muhammad Ali Parkinson Center and was given a tour, which, just so you're aware, is his research center is all focused on caregiver support.
Wow.
They coach and they teach the caregivers. It looks like the inside of your home.
Okay.
There's a kitchen, there's a bathroom, there's a family room, because that's where people with Parkinson's or any brain disease, that's where they live.
Right.
And so the caregiver needs to be coached, needs to be trained, needs to understand how to navigate in that environment.
Right.
And so that's what the champ's legacy was. He wanted to give back to the caregivers and to support them for what they're going through. So when you asked me the question earlier about that wicked fight, did that cause a Parkinson's?
Right.
I think it was a lot that led up to it.
Right.
The fact that he had trauma to the brain.
Right.
Stress to the brain. That is a trigger that can, trigger the body to, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and then it ended up, passing on from it. And his degree of symptoms with the Parkinson's is different. Right. Everybody's Parkinson's is individual.
Right.
You can't compare one person with Parkinson's to the next, because it's all individualized.
Well, there's no
question. It makes it so complicated to treat, because you can see Michael on TV,
right,
and how very prominent his dyskinesia is and his tremors. And my father, his Parkinson's, he has more freezing moments, which, by the way, a freezing moment is when you want to move and your body is frozen and you can't, and you're stuck.
Interesting.
Until your brain catches up to the signal to move.
Right.
And then it goes. So you don't see a lot of the tremors and the dyskinesia, but the voice projection is very soft, which is interesting because in New York City, there's a boxing gym that is the first original one that the champ started and used to train in, and there is an exercise program called Rock Steady.
Right.
It was designed by a group of scientists that studied the movement of boxing,
right,
and how it helps combat the symptoms of Parkinson's. And so through this program, it showed that it actually decreased the severity of the symptoms, the physical symptoms of what Parkinson's does to the brain,
right,
and to the body. So, for instance, the side-to-side movement, the balancing movement that you get into the ring, the
right,
voice projection every time you hit the bag, every time you hit it, you yell to help work those muscles in the voice box. The balancing from side to side, just the agility work. And so the Rock Steady, the gym in New York City, that was the first boxing gym to actually host and have that program, which now is nationwide, which is great because it's helped so many thousands and thousands of people that are suffering with Parkinson's.
Right.
At least give them a little hope and comfort as they battle this disease.
Well, what I do know is, you're right, the trigger points are what they are, but I do know that blunt force head trauma is certainly, like you say, a trigger point that could definitely lead to the disease. There's no doubt, anytime you have something that affects your brain and you get hit with any kind of blunt force trauma, there's a stimulus response that undoubtedly can do it. I think we can both agree on that. And I also had I have tremors every now and then myself, and I was originally diagnosed with Parkinson's, but a second opinion after they did CAT scans revealed that I didn't, but I was on that medication, and I still have tremors nowadays. So I can.
And I want to make sure that I make this very clear that there are a lot of misdiagnoses of physicians, your GP, that will use physical symptoms
right,
and diagnose and misdiagnose Parkinson's.
right,
You are not truly diagnosed with Parkinson's unless you have an actual brain scan.
right, and that's what happened with me, Jen. It really did. So
They cannot put you, and they should not put you, on Parkinson's medication
right,
if it doesn't follow with a brain scan.
well,
Because all you're doing is covering up a scab with a Band-Aid, and you're not treating the wound.
well,
It doesn't make any difference. I mean, it's not going to help you.
right. Well, that happened to me.
There's Parkinsonisms that can be treated, but if you're diagnosed with Parkinson's and you haven't had a brain scan, I think you should go back and ask for a consult to your neurologist.
Well,
That's the first number one thing you should do.
well, what I did is I got rid of the other one and got a second opinion. That's what helped me. So I got to bring up these other points, okay? And, in December, I had an opportunity to visit Ali's gravesite at Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville, Kentucky in December. And, Jennifer, I spent like 30 to 40 minutes over there. I just could not leave. And that place is huge if you've ever been to Cave Hill Cemetery in Louisville. It's just unreal. But, I spent a week with the champ here at Allen Park in North Miami Beach, and I spent with him, and I saw the tremors and all that, and the voice. It was just unbelievable. So with that, so when we talk about that, Jennifer, and I like to bring up my experience with the champ there. For all those people that are just tuning in right now, you are listening to the Sports Exchange on the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network. So why don't you tell everybody that just tuned in now, how did you get into this nonprofit again, Jennifer?
Yeah, so Team Gateway to a Cure. I started it 3 years ago. My father was diagnosed with Parkinson's, and I collaborated with Michael J. Fox. And after speaking with him and working with him, and him honoring me in New York City for the money that I raised for his organization, I asked him, there has to be a way where I could bring your resources to St. Louis and really increase the awareness of caregiver support. And so they actually gave me the name Team Gateway to a Cure. And I designed a logo, came up with a board of directors, a mission statement, and had an unveiling of all of that, sent out a press release to the media, and announced for the first time, November 2016, Team Gateway to a Cure was born. And ever since then, as of today, we are in the post-production of a Race for Another Day documentary movie, which I spoke of earlier,
right,
as well as the early stages of putting together a caregiver support storybook, a story chapter book of other public figures that are going through loving their loved ones as an adult child, son or a daughter of not just Parkinson's, Scott, but other brain diseases. We've got aneurysms, ALS, MS, concussions, Alzheimer's, which is the sister to Parkinson's,
right,
which is really today a really great opportunity scientifically for crossing over the medication that's already been FDA approved,
right,
to use the same medicine to treat Parkinson's and vice versa. And it's been really, really positive in that perspective. And the other thing, if you go on Fox Insight, the Michael J. Fox Foundation website, and even if you do not have Parkinson's or any other brain disease, you can fill out a questionnaire and answer just a few questions that data can actually help through the database worldwide, help understand more truly about brain activity, and to help give Michael's foundation more information to fund better research to come up. Finally, we will come up with a cure.
Okay, so Jennifer, tell everybody what you are looking to get out of this nonprofit Parkinson's Awareness Quest.
Yeah, so soon to be, we are going to be launching a podcast, and it's going to be called Generation C, C for Caregiver, and I will be having talks social media, and I'll be announcing it on my website. We'll be doing talks weekly, um, talking with me and asking me questions about how you share your story as a caregiver, because trauma bonding is the number one thing that helps us all get through our days, and coming together and collaborating our stories is going to give each one of us some hope and comfort. So to go on the website, ask me questions. I'd be love to answer, reach out to everybody. And also, if you have a loved one or in memory of a loved one that would love to donate in honor of them, we would definitely recognize their name at the end credits of the movie. And we're always, looking for and would love to have any kind of donation to help fund the end of producing the end of this movie. And then just, reach out to teamgatewaytoacure.org, and would love to come back on the show. If listeners have questions that they would like me to answer, we could do a Q&A in the future for sure.
Well, I'm open for anything that we can. I want to go over a lighthearted question, and then I'll go over a couple more things before we wrap up. I got to admit, last week on a broadcast on the network, we talked about favorite sports movies, and I was thinking about you. And one of the ones that I like, football, is Replacements. And how you have did you ever like that movie Replacements at all? It was a lighthearted moment with, they had the replacement players and then a cheerleader. Does that sort of thing go on where cheerleaders and players sometimes actually hit it off awfully good?
Absolutely, it's not. It's an NFL rule. You are not allowed
Right.
to date a player, and if you are caught dating, you will be kicked off the team.
Wow.
Not only just the cheerleaders, but the players.
Wow.
It's an NFL rule throughout the whole organization, and they're very adamant about it.
Right.
The only time that the cheerleaders and the players actually interact with each other is if we're together at a public appearance,
Right.
doing photos and autographs, or off the field, if we're doing some kind of an auction together.
Right.
But outside of that, we're there for a job.
Right.
I get paid to be a brand ambassador
Right.
for the NFL, and I utilize that to the best of my capabilities through the years by banking my network friendships.
Right.
No, there's no cash connected to that, but I find that there's a lot of value in the friendships and the networks of friendships that I've created and continued to have through the years. In fact, my foundation and my brand and who I am today would not be where I'm at if it wasn't for all of the friendships that I find very, very valuable in my life.
Well, for those individuals that really need to understand the fictional world versus non-fictional world, at least you're able to, differentiate the two very well. And I wanted to throw that out there. There might be some people out there that want to know, and at least you're able to shed light on it. So I'm glad that you certainly have clarification.
The players and the cheerleaders, they do not date.
Well, that's okay. It's one of our lighthearted moments. What can I tell you,
Yeah.
Jennifer? So with that,
And also, there's an NFL rule that if you notice that we do not travel unless we go to the Super Bowl.
wow.
Yes, there is not a cheerleader squad for every football team. Green Bay doesn't have them. You notice that?
Well,
Chicago doesn't have them.
Yeah, many years ago, though, Jennifer, I got to tell you, the Detroit
Honey
Lions. What's that?
Yeah, the Honey Bears were years ago, but that just disintegrated away.
Well, years ago, the Detroit Lions used to have high school cheerleaders instead of the regular ones. So with that said, one last thing here. How can people reach you, Jennifer?
Yeah, again, the website, www.teamgatewaytoacure.org. I'm also on social media. Instagram is Team Gateway to a Cure. LinkedIn, Team Gateway to a Cure. And Facebook is Team Gateway to a Cure.
And just so you know, folks, you're listening to the South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network, the Sports Exchange. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth, Jennifer, just so you know. And you can reach us here on, you can follow us on Twitter. Scoop is my personal handle, Scoop with 5 3s, at Tribune South. You can follow us there. On Instagram, South Florida Tribune. And Jennifer follows me on Facebook. Thank you very much, Jennifer. And you can South Florida Tribune.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a joy. And again, I hope that through my passion of what I follow and what I do, what I stand for, that I'm giving some hope and comfort back to others that might be going through the exact same thing. So again, thank you so much, Scott, and really enjoyed talking with you. And again, people can reach out, teamgatewaytoacure.org, for any questions if they want to get in contact.
Well, great work, Jennifer. Before we get off, I just want to let everybody know that we both agree that everybody out there, please be safe. But we hope that Jennifer and I have accomplished one thing tonight, not only giving you a lot of information, but taking away from, give you a nice opportunity to listen into our broadcast and take away from your regular time there and listen to this broadcast, which will make sure it's readily accessible. If you need to reach Jennifer or I, you can also reach us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. I'll get all your questions to Jennifer, as Jennifer and I hope to continue to stay in touch beyond the night. So meanwhile, Jennifer, once again, thanks for being on the broadcast. You've been an absolute pleasure, and again, your Parkinson's work strikes a chord with me, and keep up the great work, Jennifer. We need more people out there like you. All right?
Thanks again, Scott. All right.
Thank
Take
you.
care and God bless.
You bet.